So now in today's lecture, basically, I want to discuss two major things. Is that how we can use action listener class with a button. When we click on a button, certain action needs to happen. For that particular purpose, we had used an on-click event constraint with a method. That we declared a method in main activity.java और उसको फिर हमने link कर दिया था हमारी on-click events के साथ, button के साथ. However, there are different ways of doing it. That method sometimes is considered as a depreciated. कि यार ये पुराना method है, भाई इसको इस्तेमाल नहीं करो. अब आपको क्या करना है, बेसिकली थोड़ा सा एक एक्शन लिस्नर वाला क्लास यूज करना है, जो जावा का एक स्टैंडर्ड तरीका है किसी भी बटन को इवेंट को ड्राइव करने के लिए. तो एक हम वी विल बी ट्राइंग टू वर्क विद दैट एक्शन लिस्नर क्लास. सेकंड मेजर थिंग इज दैट वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड नाउ दैट हाउ वी कैन यूज मल्टीपल एक्टिविटीज. बाय दैट वी मीन दैट वंस यू हैव सिंगल एक्टिविटी, आप उस पर क्लिक करें तो दूसरा पेज लोड हो जाए या दूसरा लेआउट आ जाए, फिर वहां पे क्लिक करें तीसरा लेआउट आ जाए. सिमिलरली वी प्रोसेस 2 and 3 different layouts together. How do we do that? In order to do that, we need something called intent, and we create multiple activities. If you're here for the first time, please don't forget to visit my page and subscribe the channel. You will find that on my channel, there are more than 500 video lectures based on PHP, mail scripting, Maya embedded language, 3D graphics, from developing HTML, CSS, JavaScript to working on Android, Photoshop, multimedia technology, and so on and so forth. So these tutorials will be very helpful and very productive for you. So don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell icon, and receive notifications regularly. So now once the Android is closed, we come back into our main activity window. Now again, the task is that we are basically able to understand how we can use multiple activities, or in other words, that once a user clicks on a button, another activity pops up. तो जो दूसरी स्क्रीन आ जाती है, वो दूसरी स्क्रीन एंड्रॉइड में कैसे है. मैं एक सॉफ्टवेयर जब बनाने बैठता हूँ तो एक ही विंडोज पे हम काम नहीं करते, एक ही स्क्रीन पे काम नहीं करते. Idea is that we have multiple screens. So when I click on one screen, another screen pops up. I have multiple options there. I select one option, another screen pops up. So how do we create those multiple screen features within our Android? For that, what we do is we use something called intents. Along with intents, what I will be doing is I will try to use something called action listener class for our buttons. So instead of using a method to call a particular event, we use something called action listeners that are more professionally recommended that you perform, so that on multiple devices, you don't come across errors or issues. Direct calling a method within your on-click event is now considered as a depreciated, which we did in previous class. So we will use two to three new things in this class today. We will try to use action listeners for our button. We will try to use intents to call next activity, and then we will perform and see how you can create a new activity which can be called using intents. Okay, so let's begin. So once we come into this Android Studio, हम आ जाते हैं new project के अंदर. Within new project, you will create it with empty activity. You can start with any of these activities. Okay, no problem with that. If you need कि आपकी activity drawers वगैरह पे काम कर रही है, and we will be using that for future classes. लेकिन because just for understanding purpose, मेरा है कि यार empty activity से भाई शुरू करते हैं, ठीक है. So we click on empty activity and next पे चलेगा. अब आ जाते हैं एप्लीकेशन नाम के ऊपर. मैंने कह दिया भाई इसको BS सॉफ्टवेयर मॉर्निंग अंडरस्कोर, और अब आपके साथ क्या बना है, मैंने पार्क टूर ऐप एक बनाई थी प्रीवियस क्लास के अंदर. मैंने उसका ट्यूटोरियल ऑलरेडी आई थिंक रखा हुआ होगा, मैं रख दूंगा उसका ट्यूटोरियल, आपको लिंक्स पे शेयर कर देंगे सो दैट यू फॉलो दैट ट्यूटोरियल एज वेल. दैट ट्यूटोरियल में हम लोग पाकिस्तान टूर की एक एप्लीकेशन बनाई थी, मैंने उसका भी थोड़ा डेमो भी दे दिया. आपके साथ मैं वो चीज नहीं बनाना चाह रहा, लेकिन सेम रिपीटेटिव हो जाएगा, वो लेक्चर भी होगा तो ये भी बात नहीं बनेगी. तो आई वांट टू क्रिएट समथिंग न्यू सो दैट वंस यू फॉलो माय लेक्चर्स, तो आपके पास एक तरीका वो भी होगा और आपका अपना भी तरीका होगा, और इसी तरह दो नेक्स्ट क्लास में मैं अलग से कोई तरीका बताऊंगा, ठीक है. तो वो मैंने कहा है कि आई विल नॉट ट्राई टू रिपीट द सेम थिंग इन एवरी सिंगल क्लास, सो दैट I can have multiple different tutorials so that students get more views, that how, or more ideas that how we can develop applications. So in this case, let's just create something called क्या बना है? Any ideas? चलें, let's just do this. Story team. दादी की कहानी, क्या बात आ गई, ठीक. So for example, I want to create an app दादी की कहानी, which is basically which stands for grandmother's stories. Okay, मैं एक ऐप बनाना चाह रहा हूँ जिसमें मैं पुरानी कहानियां उसमें रखूं और बच्चे जो है उसको कहानियों को रीड आउट करें और उसमें कहानी लिखी भी हो, स्टोरी बुक काइंड ऑफ अ थिंग. तो हम अब एक ऐप बना लेते हैं. ओके, सो इसका हमने नाम दे दिया दादी की कहानी, या व्हाटएवर यू वांट टू गिव. सो इफ आई कम डाउन हियर, द प्रोजेक्ट फोल्डर, which is again very important, that package name should not be example. Again, we are trying to change it wherever we can. In this case, I will say BS software underscore morning, so that for your class it's more apparent. Let me just make sure it's not in caps, and then the project folder name is already there. I'm going to save in the same location. I'm saving all projects. Java is the language I will be using with starting from 0.5 lollipop. Okay. So any name you want to give, you can follow along. Let's just create a storybook app and we can start with that. Okay. So now in this app, basically the idea is that this app starts, it will have a few options. User will select which story they want to read, and a story description and the complete information of that story will pop up. Got it? So we said, okay, got it. So let's just wait for this guy to start up completely. Meanwhile, it starts. Let's just go on to Hazrat Google, and यहाँ पे आके I will go inside images.google.com and यहाँ पे search कर देते हैं image grandma story telling. GHC. So I need an icon for my app. Okay. So you can see this case, somebody already has worked on this and I can find lots of good stories and good icons. So I can use this icon. I hope it's allowed. We need to have a free icon as well. It's a good resolution. So I can use this. Actually, I like this one. So let me just save this image inside my Android class folder. There's a folder I've written as images, which I used in previous class as well. I will just use this for my all reference images. Grandma story. Okay, so I save this image here. Perfect. Now what I need to do is I need to go inside and use button. So for example, this image will be there, but along with this image, I want to create certain buttons as well. So it's not necessarily that you use the same buttons. You can use design buttons on internet or on your own Play Store and create your own custom buttons if you want for that purpose. Okay. So you can use all of any of these buttons to make your application look more interesting and more appealing. If you follow me. Okay. So see this, these button ideas are there. You can just crop out any particular image so that your button looks very aesthetically nice. In this case, see this, all these wonderful button backgrounds and foregrounds are already available for us. So sometimes you see a very cool interface in Android. They are all simply images. They are not actual buttons. You can use that. Same thing goes for the web as well. So once I come back into my app, I have my app available. I go inside my resources available, main activity, everything is created. I go inside the hello world. Hello world is there. I delete this. Let's just remove it. So I have an empty canvas available. Let's just start creating the app. Now, first thing we do is that we need to create a very simple interface. Okay. And we have been using constraint layout. Instead of constraint layout, this time I will switch to a different layout structure. I don't want to use this. So what I do is I go back into my code level. Again, this is a design view. By default, we're getting a design view. If you click on split, you see you will get a code. If you click a complete code button here, you will come back into a complete code. It's a good practice to come back into code once and often, ताकि आपको थोड़ा सा कोड का भी सलाम दुआ मौजूद रहे. यहाँ पे आपको नजर आएगा कि हमने लिखा हुआ है Android constraint layout widget dot constraint layout. इस पूरी लाइन को सेलेक्ट किया, मैंने डिलीट मार दिया. यहाँ पे आके मैं लिख दूंगा लीनियर लेआउट. ठीक है, ये खुद ही हजरत आ गया, लीनियर लेआउट लिख दिया. लीनियर लेआउट लिखने से क्या होगा कि अब हमारे पास एक और टाइप का लेआउट आ गया जिसको हम कह रहे हैं लीनियर लेआउट. लीनियर लेआउट वर्क्स इन टू डिफरेंट वेज. एक कहलाता है हॉरिजेंटल, एक कहलाता है वर्टिकल. हॉरिजेंटल का मतलब ये कि आपके कंपोनेंट्स एक किताब की सूरत में हॉरिजेंटली स्टैक किए हुए होंगे. जैसे बुक शेल्फ के अंदर बुक्स आर ऑर्गेनाइज्ड इन अ हॉरिजेंटल ऑर्डर. तो वन कंपोनेंट, दूसरा कंपोनेंट, तीसरा कंपोनेंट इन अ हॉरिजेंटल डायरेक्शन होंगे. If you go into side of vertical mode, vertical means on top of each other or in a stack. So एक किताब यूं, एक ऐप, दूसरा ऐप, तीसरा ऐप in a stack manner. तो एक दूसरे के ऊपर components हमारे पास organized होंगे. So what we need to do now here is that we come here and we will say Android and the OID Android colon orientation. Oopsie daisy. Orientation और इसको मैं कर दूंगा vertical. ठीक है. So then my components are basically organized in a vertical stack manner, not in horizontal manner. Now if I go back into main activity or within this, if I go inside the design, sorry, तो you need कि अब वहां से constraint हट गया, layout आ गया. ये चीज आप यहाँ से खुद भी कर सकते हो. By the way, आपको कोड में जाने की जरूरत नहीं है भाईजान. यहाँ से constraint layout उठा के ड्रॉप कर दिया, या linear layout horizontal या linear layout vertical. You can do that from here and you can see the icon. हॉरिजेंटल आपको हॉरिजेंटल कंपोनेंट्स दे रहा है, वर्टिकल आपको वर्टिकल कंपोनेंट्स का एक इन्फो दे रहा है. यू कैन यूज दैट एज वेल. फॉर आवर सेक मैंने कहा ना, मैंने कोड के थ्रू ही जाके करना है. ठीक है. तो आप कोड के थ्रू भी कर सकते हो, कोड के थ्रू नहीं करना चाह रहे, यहाँ से हॉरिजॉन्टल डिलीट करके वर्टिकल ड्रैग एंड ड्रॉप किया, सेम थिंग, नो डिफरेंस। ठीक, वंस दिस इज क्रिएटेड आई कम इनसाइड हियर, और मैंने कह दिया भाईजान टेक्स्ट बना दो यहाँ पे। ठीक है, और यहाँ पे हमने अपनी ऐप का नाम दे दिया दादी अम्मा की कहानियां। ठीक है, ग्रैंड मास स्टोरीज। Scroll down and let me just increase the size to, for example, 25 sp. Okay, and then let me make sure that it's bold, it's centralized, and here we go. Okay, and I can increase the font little bit of its size so that it appears more in a space. Once I have that, let's just go inside images. Now I need this image that I had saved in my folder for Dadima. So what I will do is right click, I will click on edit. It will open an MS Paint. Let me just zoom out. And where is my menu system gone? Here it is. I will go inside the select and I will just select the components that I need like this. And I will click on crop. So everything else is cropped out. And I will save this story. Then I will go back inside my Word, in my Explorer, select the story, Control C to copy it, come back into my Android, go inside the resource folder, inside resource folder, drawable folder. Inside the drawable folder, I will do Control V. Okay. As soon as I paste it, it will ask me, are you sure you want to copy it in drawable folder? I said yes. Then it will tell me you need to rename it, or should the name be okay. Now, it's always recommended that you don't use spaces in between names of external files within Android. So if there is a space, you can rename it here. So I said, okay, Grandma Story JPG, this is fine, but let's just remove all the spaces. Once I click OK, this file has been copied into drawable. Now let's just go inside the widgets, go inside the image view, drag and drop the image view here. Now remember, I'm using linear layout. See what will happen. As soon as I drop the image, pick a resource window pops up. Here we will select the Grandma Story. I want this Grandma Story image. I click OK. That Grandma Story automatically is inside my view organized. So first I have a text, now I have an image. So it's being organized in a linear manner automatically. Once I select this, you can see this, there are small boxes here. I can decrease the size. So I said, okay, I don't want it that big. Let's just have it a small size. Perfect. Now, let's have a button. So I can say button, click and drag and drop the button here. Now I've created the button manually here. Like I've said, you can go on site the web and you can search any particular beautiful button you want, and you can use that button on your view. As an image, you crop it, you import it as an image, and then use an event on that. Do that same thing. We will be doing it in future reference classes as we go along. In this class, I will just use a big button here. Now what happened? First, second, third, these components are organized in a layer way. Because we are using a very simple layout, we don't need to go into constraint. This can be organized in a structure way. Linear layout is an easiest way to organize components in a linear structure if you are not going into too much complex components. For a complex UI, constraint layout is much recommended. For a simpler layout, I think a linear works fine. See, this works fine. I don't have to worry about constraints and all that thing. All are done. Select the button and I will say, let's just come here. Button text should be, let's read दादी अम्मा. कमाल हो गया यार. ठीक है, गजब का नाम मिल गया. ठीक है, तो let's read, and then let me just change the font size to 20 sp. Okay, so we have something called let's read. अच्छा, दाद अम्मा हो गया ये तो. And let me say that. Okay, so let's read means let's read grandmother. Okay, so let's have a grandmother, let's read it. So this becomes my initial welcome screen. So when app starts, I get this particular view. When I click on this view, now it will tell me another screen where I have multiple stories. Okay, in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to come into Java folder. Inside Java folder, we come into com. Inside com folder, what we do is we right click, we add something called new, और हम चले जाएंगे एक्टिविटी में, और हम चले जाएंगे अगेन आई विल क्रिएट एन एम्प्टी एक्टिविटी. अगेन वही सारी विंडोज यहाँ पर आ गई जो हमने जब स्टार्टिंग में कही थी. तो इसी जावा के अंदर कॉम के अंदर जाके राइट क्लिक किया, हम न्यू में चले गए. दिस बेसिकली मीन्स कि वी वांट टू क्रिएट समथिंग न्यू इनसाइड माय java.com फोल्डर. क्या न्यू बनाने जा रहे हैं? हमने कहा यार मुझे एक्टिविटी चाहिए. वी कैन क्रिएट मेनी अदर थिंग्स. वी विल बी गोइंग थ्रू दीज कंपोनेंट्स एज वी गो अलोंग. एक्टिविटी में आ गए, हमने कहा भाईजान हमें नई एक्टिविटी दे दो। कौन सी एक्टिविटी हुई? हमने कहा यार हमें एम्प्टी एक्टिविटी दो, क्योंकि हम खुद से बनाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। हमने कहा क्योंकि हम खुद बना रहे हैं, आ जाओ भाई, लेट्स क्रिएट अ न्यू एम्प्टी एक्टिविटी। As soon as you click on it, again new activity window comes. Now, what do we mean by new activity? Is in Android, once you have an activity, that's one screen. You want to add a second screen, that's considered as a second activity. Android उसको कहता है कि भाई आप एक और activity बना रहे. So when you start, you get one activity. That's called activity.main. But you need a second screen. Now you need to create another activity. Okay, so you need to create third screen, you create another activity. You need to create fourth screen, another activity. 5, 6, 7, 8, 20, 25, 40. How many screens you want to work depending on your app? You basically create that many activities. Okay, once you do that, it will pop up this particular message. Now it says what should be the name of that activity. I usually recommend giving it something called activity underscore, and this can be read story names. Okay, so I know that this becomes my second screen. Or sometimes if you know that you have too many screens, give it a name so that you remember the sequence as well. Activity 2, activity 1 was the main. This is my second screen, this is my third screen, this is my fourth screen, and then the purpose of that screen underscore story names. This is the second screen that will display the names of the story that we want to display. That's fantastic. What is the layout? I said use it as the standard layout. Generate a layout file. I want that as well, so leave it blank. Tick. Package name, launcher activity. For now, just leave it blank because this is not a main launcher activity. This is the second activity that gets executed when I click on the button. Source Java, package folder, same name. I said yes, click on finish. So everything else default. I just named the activity correctly. Now, once you do that, wait for a few seconds, it's still building the activity. See this? Once you do that, you will find that you had activity main, in which we divided our first app. We had a main activity.java. Let me just pop this guy and here so that these two things are together. Then there is something called activity underscore activity to story name. I don't know why it added activity itself here as well. This should not have happened. Okay, it added activity itself. It should not have happened. We can refactor that, but I don't want to do that. I don't know why it added activity underscore activity story too. So anyway, so now you know you have two different files. One called XML, जिसमें हमारे पास blank activity again आ गई. We have another blank activity here, and we have called something called story name. Another Java file with the second activity. So every activity you create, you get two files for it. XML for layout, Java file for backend. So every activity you will have two files there. If I come back into project window, you will not see I have activity 2 story names Java file. If I go inside my layout window and inside the resources folder, inside the resource folder, I have now called activity underscore activity 2 story names. Okay, so I have this file, this was file. So now we get two additional files. Similarly, the more activities you create, the more files you get. But keep in mind, for every activity, we have an XML file, जो उसका user interface design करती है. We have Java file, जो उसका backend coding देती है. XML file for the user interface and the Java file for the backend coding. For every activity we create, we get these two different files. अब हमें क्या करना है? आए हैं भाई, बहुत आसान सी बात है. स्टोरी में आ गए. अब भी हमारे पास ब्लैंक कैनवस रहा. अब आपको बताना है कि मेरी जब ऐप खुलेगी तो भाईजान ने स्टोरी कैसे दिखानी है. ठीक है, भाईजान ने स्टोरी कैसे दिखानी है. हम कंस्ट्रेंट लेआउट पे काम करें. हम लेआउट्स में अगर आ जाए तो मैं फॉर एग्जांपल लीनियर पे काम कर सकता हूं. मैंने कह दिया यार ऐसा करो मेरे भाई कि इस कंस्ट्रेंट के अंदर सबसे पहले तो डाल देते हैं टेक्स्ट व्यू. ठीक है, जिसमें मेरी हेडिंग आ जाएगी. मैंने जो पहली विंडो बनाई थी, ये दादी अम्मा की कहानियां. ठीक है, मैं इसको भी कॉपी कर सकता हूं. मैं एक्टिविटी 2 में आया, इसको राइट क्लिक करके यहाँ पे पेस्ट भी कर सकता हूँ. डन. तो अगर एक कंपोनेंट आपने बना दिया, आप पेस्ट भी कर सकते हैं. दूसरा मजे की तरीका बताता हूँ. मैंने कहा कोडिंग पे थोड़ा जाने की आदत डालो. हम आ गए इसके कोड के अंदर. तो यू विल फाइंड कि देयर इज एक्सएमएल कोड रिटन हियर. ये पहली एक्टिविटी जो बनाई थी, तो इसमें हमने टेक्स्ट व्यू बनाया हुआ है और उसमें दादी अम्मा की जो कहानी लिखी हुई है, ये टेक्स्ट बनाया हुआ है. आई कैन कॉपी दिस टेक्स्ट. I can come into my XML story. I can go inside my code. I have a constraint layout already available. Remember, इसने देखो layout बनाया था, फिर ये layout यहाँ पे close हुआ और फिर linear layout यहाँ पे close हुआ. ठीक है. So you need to decide which basically layout you want to use. and then you can drop the code in that particular layout as well. तो मैं यहाँ पे आके इसके अंदर लेआउट में कोड ड्रॉप कर दिया. एंड जस्ट लाइक दैट. ठीक है, तो मैंने इसको यहाँ पे पहले इस टैग को स्टार्ट किया था, इस टैग को एंड किया और हमने कंपोनेंट बना दिया. यू कैन डू दैट हियर एज वेल, और वेरी सिंपली if you don't want to do that you can come into the main code file. मेरे पास एरर आ गया था, मैं बाद में जा रहा हूँ एरर क्यों आ रहा है. मैं यहाँ पे आके भी उस कंपोनेंट को जो था यहाँ से किया कॉपी, कंट्रोल सी, यहाँ पे आके इसको किया पेस्ट, तो वो कंपोनेंट यहाँ पे आ गया. ठीक है, once we are here now I can say कि for example give me a linear layout. अब हमने क्या किया, मैंने कंस्ट्रेंट लेआउट के अंदर एक और भाईजान लीनियर लेआउट बना दिया. ट्राई करते हैं, ये फर्स्ट टाइम मैं खुद तजर्बा कर रहा हूं. Once we do that, we come inside here, or now I need story thumbnails. Okay, so what, let's just say old stories icons. Let's just search that. Boom. So you see this, we get so icons. I don't know why icons. Let me come here, and you can find these are different storybooks. So for example, I want to use this image, so right click, save image, and inside my images folder a story1.jpg, इसको डाउनलोड कर देते हैं. This is another story I want to read, or this one, old is gold. Right click, oops, save image, story2.jpg. Similarly here you go, there's a wonderful stories available. Save image as, so I save images of various different stories that I can use. Okay, row, and save image as a story 4. Wonderful. Okay, so I've downloaded few stories of my Android. So I come back here and I used a linear layout. Now I decided I don't want a linear layout and I want to delete this component, and I go back inside my layout. I want to go linear with vertical layout. ठीक है, इससे पहले हमने horizontal बना दिया था. I want to use the vertical layout. So I drag and drop this here. The vertical layout is created. Now all we need to do is I need to create widgets and images. But before we can insert images here for the story thumbnail, I need to import those inside my drawable folder. Sorry, cancel. I need to include that in my drawable folder. So what I do is, जहां पे हमने इसको download करके stories को रखा था, where we have saved it, we will come here. Story 1, story, I think these are good. Story 2, 3, 4, 5. I have got these 4 story images. Copy, control C this. Okay, just make sure they don't have spaces in the name. If you have spaces, kindly rename it here. Okay, it's always for whatever reason recommended that you don't use spaces in your file name or resource folder name. It just simplifies things with your Android. So 1, story 2, 3, 4, and 5. 4 stories. I copy these images, control C, come back here, drawable folder, यहाँ आके paste कर दूं. Paste करने के बाद इसको हमने ओकी डोकी कर दिया. इसने कहा भाई यहीं पे रखना है, मैंने कहा जैसा है रख दो. You will find that all these 4 stories are available here. ठीक, once they are here, इसको ये एक्सटेंशन थोड़ी चेंज हो गई है यार, पता नहीं क्यों नेट से अक्सर डाउनलोड करते हुए आता है. Let me say if I can correct this here, right? यहाँ पे उम्मन this should not happen, but if I can use JPG, refactor, rename JPG. This is correct. Right click, refactor, rename, and let's just change this extension to JPG. That should correct the problem, hopefully. Refactor, rename JPG. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't work, then we will have to use another technique. So what do we do now is we bring an image, and let me drop the image here. Then it will ask me which story you want to read. So I want to say story 2, and you can see all these 3, 4, 5 are now available here. We can use them. So I click OK, and my story 2 is available. Now see the layout here. We have a constraint layout. constraint के अंदर हमने text डाल दिया था. Then we created as word linear layout. So this is like nesting layouts inside a constraint layout. Okay. So I said perfect. This time I will select the image, drag this image on top. ये एक image यहाँ पर आ गई. Then inside this in linear layout, I will select the linear layout. I will drop the second image. I will select, for example, story 3. Click OK. वो story आ गई. Now automatically size is adjusted. I will drag image again, drop it inside the layout. Again मुझसे पूछेगा कौन सी story. मैंने कहा story 4 select करो भाई. Story 4 आ गई. फिर मैंने image उठाई, मैंने image drop की. उसने कहा कौन सी कहानी चाहिए. मैंने कहा भैया पांचवी चाहिए. पांचवी कहानी आ गई. If you need more, you can do that. So for example, this is 4, doesn't really matter. If you add more, automatically our screen will be scrollable. Nothing to worry. So we have 4 fantastic stories available. Done. And now you can see they are very easily organized. I don't have to worry about any organization. So linear layout will allow us to organize structure linearly in a very sequential manner. If you do constraint layout, you can do that here as well. But for constraints, you will have to set constraints. It creates sometimes complications. So what I did now here is I have a constraint layout. Inside constraint layout, I have a text view. It says red dot, the constraints are not set. So the easiest way to set the constraint for this component is not doing it physically here, but coming and doing it from here. So I will come here and I will just simply click on this icon here and click on this icon here and click on this icon here. What this will do, it will automatically adjust and set the constraints for us. So we don't have to worry about it. Just click on this icons and wherever the placement we have done, adjustment will be done. Same thing you will have to do for the linear layout as well. So for linear layout, I will say left, I will say top from the top button and for bottom. Okay. So, and at the bottom as well. So now I have a linear layout set out for myself. Okay. So all the red dots are removed. This is working fine. I go back into my main activity. Activity is fine. The main thing is now remaining. How do we connect this button to show me this particular window? How do I connect this button to show me this particular window? So what we do is we go back here on this button. Instead of going into OnClick event here and writing a method name, what we do, we go inside the Java. And now we write a specific code here that will allow me to control this. That specific code is known as action listener. So first thing is we create a button and semicolon. Okay. So we created a button object outside our any particular method. As soon as you do that, there is an error here. Okay. The error is basically import class. So again, as I said, Android is magical when it comes to resolving errors. So what you need to do is you just simply need to hover your cursor over the error. It will tell you need to import this class. I said, okay, bro, import it. And you will now find inside import statements, you have an import button class. Once this is done, let's just go inside on create event. On create means this is the event will execute first time when an event is created. Inside this event, I will say button that we just now created. Use that button to assign that find view will be id dot my button name. Okay. So what we want, because this is Java, we did this in previous class as well. Inside Java, we need to find the button that was presented in XML file. So we need to find that button so we can control the event on that particular button. We go back here, we select the button, we scroll up here. The name is called button. I don't like this name. I usually give a prefix button read. Okay. So button read is there. It will say, should I refactor, rename it? I said, yes, rename it, change it, update it everywhere. So now it has a button read ID. ID are always recommended that you give your own custom ID. My habit is that I give a particular prefix so that when I go back inside the code, I know if I write BTN, these are my prefix for buttons. I write TXT, it's my prefix for text and so on and so forth. So button read pops up. I click on here and semicolon. So what I did is go inside the Android view, find an item, find a component called button read, fetch it and assign it to a Java button code here, which we create. Once this is done, now we say we assign it an action listener class. In order to do that, we will use Java's structure of action listeners. So what we do is we come here and we will say btn dot set on click listener. So button is basically this button. Again, the same thing that we did here. We can do the same thing here, but problem is this is in XML class. So we took that button, assign it to another container, another button class. Now what happens is that we use that button to set action listener event. Once that event is there, this event will trigger every time user clicks on this particular button. So when this clicks, what should happen? So we want to create and give it a particular code. So we write new view.onClick listener. Okay, so we go here and click on this particular event. Okay, no need to write, just write new view and automatically view.onClick listener code will pop up. Press enter and you will find few lines have been written for you automatically. What this basically means is that once this button is clicked and listener has been created. A listener is just someone who listens to your interface, that which button are you trying to click. It's just like if somebody very keenly reporting that the user has clicked on this particular button. This is method is more preferable when you're working with Android. It has more control and more chances of being run on almost every single device. So what we did now, we said set OnClick listener an event, and we gave it certain piece of code. Technically, this is again a pure Java code called anonymous class, creating runtime classes or creating runtime objects or runtime anonymous classes. So we know in Java, new keyword is used for creating new objects. So as an argument, we created a new object of view.onClick listener event. So view is basically a view of your Android. Inside that view, भाई आ जाओ और ऑन क्लिक इवेंट लिस्नर की आपने मेथड को कॉल कर देना. इस मेथड के अंदर हमने फिर पब्लिक वॉइड ऑन क्लिक मेथड को अलग कॉल किया. तो हमने क्लास बनाई, क्लास के अंदर एक मेथड रखा हुआ है ऑन क्लिक लिस्नर. उस मेथड के अंदर जाके हमने ओवरराइड करते हुए पब्लिक ऑन क्लिक इवेंट को उसको हमने ओवरराइड किया एक और मेथड को. ठीक, अब यहां पे हमने दे दिया फॉर एग्जांपल tost डॉट मेक टेक्स्ट, और अब मुझे यहां पे बेसिकली देना होगा कॉन्टेक्स्ट. तो हम कह देंगे गेट मेक श्योर यू डोंट गो हियर. हम दे देंगे एप्लीकेशन गेट एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट BUTT on button CLICK clicked tost dot length short or dot show. Okay, so this is something that we have done in previous class as well. Toast is an alert window for your Android. So when you click on it, it generates an alert for us. ठीक है. उसके बाद हम इसमें कह देंगे मेक टेक्स्ट करो, अलर्ट विंडो जनरेट करो एंड्रॉइड के ऊपर ही, so I can know that my window is working or not. So just like alert messages, it's just like getting an output on your Android window phone. Get application context बताना ये था. Get application context का बेसिकली मतलब ये कि क्योंकि अब हम एक रन टाइम ऑब्जेक्ट के अंदर रह के रन टाइम पे मेथड कॉल कर रहे हैं और उसको उसी टाइम डिस्ट्रॉय कर रहे हैं. This class is not created permanently. It's like a runtime anonymous class that gets created at runtime, performs its function and gets destroyed. Okay, that's the function of anonymous runtime class. So runtime पे class बनी, it performs its certain method and gets destroyed. So because this is another class, we need to know that where I need to display my alert method. For that we use something called get application context. जो current application रन रही है, चल रही है, उसका context लिया, उसके अंदर आपने अलर्ट जनरेट करके देना है. हमने कह दिया बहुत अच्छी बात है भाई, ये जनरेट कर दिया हमने. अच्छा, उसके बाद इस कोड को हम दौड़ा देते हैं. ठीक, जब तक ये कोड दौड़ेगा, अब हमने यहाँ पे दोबारा क्या किया, वी क्रिएटेड अ बटन जावा फाइल के अंदर. हमने इसको कहा कि यार इस बट और ये ऑन क्रिएट इवेंट के अंदर ही, ठीक है, ऑन क्रिएट मेथड जो बना हुआ है उसी के अंदर हमने इसको कह दिया कि व्यू में जाओ, जो एंड्रॉइड का व्यू है वहां फाइंड करो बटन रीड करके यूजर ने कौन सा बटन बनाया, वो इस वेरिएबल को असाइन कर दो. तो उसमें गया, वहां से बटन लेकर आया, फिर इस बटन के अंदर हमने ये मेथड कॉल किया. दिस इज कॉल्ड क्रिएटिंग अ रन टाइम अनोनिमस क्लास. कि रन टाइम के ऊपर उस इवेंट के अंदर हमने रन टाइम पे एक मेथड कॉल किया. ये कोड क्या करता है, आपका एक रन टाइम पे इवेंट क्रिएट करता है. ठीक है, इसको हम कहते हैं सेट ऑन क्लिक लिस्नर. ऑन क्लिक लिस्नर अगेन मींस के जब बटन के ऊपर हमने एक मेथड सेट कर दिया कि बटन के ऊपर अब तुम लिस्नर सेट कर दो, एक बंदा बैठा दो जो उस पर कड़ी नजर रखे कि भाई कर क्या रहा है. ओके, कीप मॉनिटरिंग, keep a listener on this guy, put a bug on it, on this button, what he is doing, every activity, let me know. So we set a bug on it. Once this bug is set, we said now create as soon as the bug is executed, create immediate action at runtime and execute this on-click event. Within this on-click event, we can execute whatever we want. So once I have my code available, my story app is running brilliantly. Okay, I click on this button, button click event is being triggered. Okay, that means everything is fine. The main thing is that once I click on this button, this activity panel should be loaded. It's not loaded. What should we do now? So we come back here. This time we will use something called intent. Now, intents in Android are something that are used to load and talk to activities. Okay, load activity 2 is equals to new intent. Oopsie. Hopefully my mouse is just running here and there. New intent. Okay, so basically we create an intent class. Now I will go into intents more detail in next class. We are running out of time. We were talking about intents, so let's talk about intent one more time. Intent basically are used for showing the intent and controlling and talking with your activities. Okay, so basically here we are trying to show an intent that once a button is clicked, I want to load a second activity. So intents technically coordinate and talk directly with your activities. Okay, I hope it makes sense. So using intent, we load a second activity. Okay, using intent class, it's a class within Java, specially developed for Android. So it's used to load your code, load your activities within your Android. So we say intent, any name, for example, load activity to new intent object. Within the intent object, basically what I will do, I will use a method called get application context first. This means that which application I'm running, important, because remember we are inside a runtime anonymous class. So it has to know where we are, which app is being executed, because there can be multiple apps running at the same time on your phone. So current app that is being run within this particular code, it will get that particular code for me, and then I will use the name of my activity. So for example, in this class, I will use activity underscore story names dot class semicolon. Okay, so now what we did, we used the intent object. We created a new object of this particular class. Intent is a class within Java. हमने उस class का variable बनाया, new call किया. New is a keyword that is used to indicate that we want to create a new object for a particular class. So what this will do, it will execute and create a new object by executing the constructor for that. So this is a call to constructor. So intent means हमने एक नया class बनाई है, उस class का object बनाया, उस ऑब्जेक्ट के कंस्ट्रक्टर को हमने कॉल किया, उस कंस्ट्रक्टर को दो आर्गुमेंट्स दिए, एक कि करंट कौन सी एप्लीकेशन जिसमें कोड चल रहा है वो कौन सी है, तो उसका रेफरेंस इसको आ जाएगा कि भाई यहाँ ये वाली चल रही है, दादी अम्मा वाली कहानी चल रही है, तो दादी अम्मा वाली कहानी में जाओ, उस दादी अम्मा की कहानी में जाओ, वहां पे आपको एक पेज मिलेगा जिसका नाम है एक्टिविटी 2 स्टोरी नेम्स, जो जावा वाली फाइल होगी, स्टोरी एक्टिविटी 2 स्टोरी नेम्स, ये वाली फाइल का नाम दिया dot class. Now we remember that when we compile and execute every code, Java code is converted into a dot class file. So here we give a dot class file extension. That activity 2 underscore story names dot class करके एक फोल्डर फाइल होगी, तुमने उस फाइल को एग्जीक्यूट करना है. जब ये बटन क्लिक होगा तो ये कोड एग्जीक्यूट होगा, तो वो एक्टिविटी कॉल हो जाएगी. फिर हमने सिंपली उस एक्टिविटी को कॉल करने के बाद एक इवेंट हम लिख देंगे, लोड एक्टिविटी 2, नहीं सॉरी, हम लिखेंगे स्टार्ट एक्टिविटी और इसके अंदर हम दे देंगे लोड एक्टिविटी 2. ठीक है, फिर एक फंक्शन कॉल करेंगे. ये बिल्ट इन फंक्शन मौजूद है हमारे पास, जो इनहेरिट होकर आया, जो एक्टिविटीज को स्टार्ट करता है. इस एक्टिविटी को हम वो इंटेंट दे देंगे कि भाईजान आपका इरादा क्या था, कौन सी एक्टिविटी आपने स्टार्ट करनी है. तो हमने कह दिया ये लोड 2 वाली को भाई स्टार्ट कर दो. सो नाउ व्हाट दिस विल बेसिकली मीन, we got a button, we put an action listener on it. Within action listener, we created an intent to load the third activity, and then we started that activity, we started that intent कि ये हमारा इरादा है जो है इसको अब पाया तकमील पे पहुंचाया जाए. Take that activity should be now performed. So once we do that, hopefully there is no error in the code. For now, I don't see any. Let me close this event. Let this be closed, saving data state. and let's very quickly test it and hope this application executes. Okay, so it's closing, it's closing, it's closing. And next time what we do is we click on the run button again. So it's building the Gradle. Meanwhile, it loads. So I hope you understand the function of intent and this particular code. So this is the code that we use to ensure that we find a button on which we want to perform an activity. And then we use an action listener class, action listener method on it. So that action is being listened whenever a user clicks on it, listen to that particular event. Once that is done, action is performed. We create a runtime listener class and we perform various different events within actions within our OnClick. Inside this, toast is just for an alert, just to check whether you are getting an output or not. We use something called intent. तो बटन बनाया, बटन के बाद हमने उसमें एक्शन लिस्नर लगाया, एक्शन लिस्नर के अंदर हमने रन टाइम क्लास बनाई, उस रन टाइम क्लास में हमने ऑन क्लिक इवेंट को ओवरराइड किया था जो प्रीवियस बनाया था, उस ऑन क्लिक के अंदर हम बना रहे हैं। तो समझो एक हायरार्की के हिसाब से स्ट्रक्चरल फोल्ड चल रही है जिसमें फिर हमारे पास एरर कम होते हैं और कंपेटिबिलिटी बहुत ज्यादा होती है। यहाँ पे हमने टोस्ट को, भले फिर आप कमेंट भी कर दें बाद में, हमने इंटेंट बनाया। इंटेंट मींस वो इरादा, तो ये जावा की क्लास है, इसका ऑब्जेक्ट बनाया और एक मेथड कॉल किया स्टार्ट एक्टिविटी, और उसका ऑब्जेक्ट जो है उस एक्टिविटी को दे दिया कि भाई ये वाली एक्टिविटी शुरू करनी है, कौन सी, जिसको हमने इंटेंट बनाया। तो इंटेंट बेसिकली आपकी एक्टिविटी क्लास के साथ बात करता है। वंस इट इज डन, इफ आई कम बैक हियर, दादी अम्मा की कहानियां स्टार्ट हो चुकी हैं, भाईजान लीड पे कराया, खुल जा सिम, ये कहानी खुल गई, ठीक, हमारी ऐप बन गई भाई, फैंटास्टिक। इफ आई गो बैक, यू वुड सी कि आई कम बैक इनटू माय विंडो, आई क्लिक ऑन दादी अम्मा की कहानियां एंड इट लोड्स माय विंडो, आई गो बैक, my main window comes up, I click on the let's read, I get these stories. If you have more stories, this will be scrollable, otherwise it's here. So now I get the second window. So I hope you understand this basic fundamental of creating two windows. In next class, what we will do, we will click on any of these stories. We will make a button on the out of these images. So once I click on this image, the third activity starts. On the third activity, again, we will have this entire story. So that we can read the entire story. We have a back button, we come back here. We select another story, we read that story. We go back here, and similarly, we can read as many stories as we want. Okay. So for next class, inshallah, see you around. Yahan tak, any question, any confusion, how, do let me know in your comments, in your chats or in WhatsApp group that, sir, ये चीज समझ में नहीं आई है, ये event समझ में नहीं आया, ये चीज हमसे सही नहीं हो रही है. ठीक है, I would be happy to respond.